Title: My rich aunt left me everything. My parents, who abandoned me 15 years ago, suddenly showed up. My name is Elaine, and yesterday, I became a millionaire. My Aunt Vivien, the woman who raised me, left me everything. 2 million in liquid assets, her Victorian mansion, and a company worth millions. I was still swallowing the grief when the door opened, and time just paused. They walked in smiling like nothing had happened. My parents, the same people who vanished 15 years ago without a goodbye. My mother's voice was a sugary whisper, "We're your guardians, sweetheart." Her eyes skimmed the law office like she was pricing it. My father nodded, a practiced sadness on his face. They thought they were walking into a reunion. What they didn't know was that my Aunt Vivien had spent a decade building a quiet fortress, a plan designed for this exact moment. They weren't stepping into a welcome. They were stepping into a trap. Before I tell you how it all unraveled, tell me this. If the people who abandoned you came back the day you inherited a fortune, what would you do? Comment your honest take. And if you've dealt with toxic family, hit like and subscribe. You're not alone here. I used to think my life was normal. We weren't rich, but we were okay. Friday movie nights, summer camping trips, Christmas mornings with hot chocolate that always tasted a little burnt. But the signs were there. 2 quiet fights behind thin doors, late-night phone calls my dad took outside, overtime shifts that smelled like cigarettes and cheap whiskey. My father's poker nights turned into full weekends away in Atlantic City. I heard my mom crying once, begging him to stop before we lost everything. He promised. Promises, I learned, were coins he tossed without ever counting. My mom began fading, too. Smiles dimming, curtains closed, days spent in bed. The morning they left is carved into me. The apartment felt hollow, like someone had scooped the sound out of it. Their closet doors gaped open. On the counter, a single folded note. "Elaine, we can't do this anymore. Your Aunt Vivien will take care of you. We're sorry." 13 years of life collapsed into 16 words. I'd only met my Aunt Vivien twice, my father's older sister, a stern woman with sharp suits and sharper silences. According to my parents, she never approved of their choices. I had no way to reach her. For 3 days, I lived on cereal and tap water and the shrinking idea that maybe they'd come back. On day 3, after the landlord threatened social services, I called my school counselor. She made the call that found my aunt. The next morning, a sleek black car slid into our cracked driveway. Vivien stepped out in charcoal wool and pearls, posture like a blade. She didn't pity, she planned. She said, "Pack what you can carry." Not unkind, just precise. The rest can be shipped. I took a last look at our apartment, the scuffed baseboards, the crooked photo frames, and walked out of one life into the care of the only person who would ever truly show up for me. Her house looked like it had slipped out of a different century, a Victorian with wraparound porches and windows that blinked in the sun. Inside, everything was deliberate. Heavy velvet curtains, polished floors you didn't dare cross with shoes, an antique piano that never stayed silent for long. Rules were posted in practice, not on paper. Breakfast at 7, no shoes on the hardwood, 1 hour of piano daily, homework done before screens. It should have felt like a prison. It felt like safety. Structure, I learned, is just a kind of love in uniform. She wasn't warm, not in the way I understood warmth, but there were moments. The time she found me crying over an old photo and just handed me a linen handkerchief, sitting beside me until my breathing leveled. The math test I failed, she didn't scold me. She hired a tutor and adjusted my study schedule like she was rebalancing a portfolio. Her kindness arrived wearing a suit and carrying a plan. She had built her life from a modest inheritance, turning a single houseware shop into 30 high-end boutiques. Weekdays were long, but dinner was sacred. Saturdays, I shadowed her through meetings. She'd murmur, "Watch how people negotiate. Business is human psychology applied to commerce." When public school faltered, she moved me to a private academy. I stumbled, then learned to run. "Circumstances change without your permission," she told me, sliding a cup of tea across the table. "Your response is entirely yours." It wasn't soft, it was steady. I clung to steady. I made honor roll. I graduated from Northwestern with honors. She shook my hand like a board chair, but her eyes gave her away. I came home as her company's marketing director. We found a rhythm, two women who valued silence, both a little allergic to chaos. Then life swung the hammer. Pancreatic cancer, the kind that steals quickly. She met it like she met everything, with lists, clarity, and no room for self-deception. In those last months, a gentler undertow surfaced. One night, helping her into bed, she squeezed my hand. "You were the daughter I never allowed myself to have," she whispered. "Taking you in was the best decision of my life." 8 months later, she left in her sleep. I was 28. The house echoed. The routines were still there, but the person who made them make sense was gone. I told myself I'd never see my biological parents again. Then, the letter arrived from Harold Thompson, Vivien's attorney, her ally for 30 years. Formal, precise. The will reading had been scheduled, all interested parties present. I wore a navy suit she'd have approved of, and arrived early. The office smelled like leather and old paper, the scent of decisions. Thompson greeted me with that polite gravity lawyers collect over years. He said, "We're waiting for a few others." Door opened, I turned, and there they were. My father's hair had thinned to a tired gray. His shoulders slumped, weighted by something I couldn't name. My mother's face had sharpened, cheekbones carving where softness used to be. She reached for me, a hug I couldn't find a way to return. Her perfume was familiar enough to hurt. "Elaine," my father said, careful, like the word might break. "Look at you." I asked, "How did you know about today?" He said quietly, "We've kept tabs on you." So they knew. All these years, they knew, and never reached out. Harold cleared his throat, opening a thick folder. "We are here to execute the last will and testament of Vivien Eleanor Hughes." They leaned forward, a small involuntary tell, and the truth landed. They hadn't come for me. They'd come for what was left. Harold read, "To my niece, Elaine Margaret Winters, I leave the entirety of my estate." He listed it, the mansion, the business, the assets, the art. I knew she was successful. I hadn't understood the scale. My father coughed. "Is there anything else?" Harold said, "There are minor bequests, but the bulk of the estate passes to Elaine." My mother smiled brightly, a social smile that never touches the eyes. She murmured, "That's quite a responsibility for someone so young." She patted my hand. "Luckily, as her parents, we can help her manage it." My father added, almost casually, "Since our parental rights were never terminated, we remain her legal guardians. We'll assist with the assets." My heartbeat hammered. After 15 years, they'd come back, for control. I opened my mouth, but Harold's gaze touched mine, calm, anchoring. He said smoothly, "There appears to be some confusion. We should reconvene tomorrow." City hush under, evening light fading. We filed out of the conference room in a polite silence that felt like a held breath. In the hallway, my father cleared his throat. "Why don't we have dinner? Just us, no lawyers." My mother's smile was quick, hopeful, a little too rehearsed. "I'll think about it," I said. Outside, I called Harold. He picked up on the first ring. Don't sign anything, he said before I could speak. No transfers, no powers of attorney. If they push, refer them to me. Also, we're in a one-party consent state. If you meet them, record the conversation for your own notes. I stared at my reflection in the glass. So I should go? If you want answers, go, he said. But gather information, that's all. I made the reservation at an Italian place Vivien loved. White tablecloths, low lamps, a ceiling painted like dusk. They were early. Of course they were. My mother stood to hug me. A small gold locket flashed at her throat. I recognized it. A baby photo of me used to sit inside. My father's hands were steady in that deliberate way that comes from controlling a tremor. Human details, complications, and yet the script unfolded anyway. We spent 20 minutes on polite nothing. Arizona heat, my job, the house. Then the air shifted. "We owe you the truth," my mother said softly, fingers whirring the locket chain. "We were drowning. Your father had a problem. Gambling," my father finished, not quite meeting my eyes. "I thought I could fix it. Your mother was depressed. We convinced ourselves Vivien could give you what we couldn't. You could have given me you," I said. Silence. "You could have shown up." He flinched. "We regret. Every day." The waiter arrived with plates, saving us for a moment. The room hummed. Glasses clinked. Someone laughed too loudly. The scent of lemon and garlic drifted by. I hit record on my phone beneath the napkin. My father leaned forward. "Vivien left you, a lot to manage. We can help. Ease the burden." "In what way?" My voice stayed even. "Just to get us stable again," my mother said quickly. "We fell behind on our mortgage in Arizona. $70,000 would catch us up. Then there are medical bills, about 30. $100,000, I repeated. "Only if you can," my father added, softening. "We don't want to take from you. We just want to be included. We're your family." "Blood matters," my mother said, like it was a password that should open every door. I set my fork down. "Let's be clear. If you want a relationship, it won't start with access to my accounts. It will start with a year of demonstrated change, meetings with a therapist, a recovery program, consistent contact that doesn't mention money, boundaries." My father's mouth tightened. "We're not asking for a handout. Think of it as a seed. We can invest it, grow it for you." "Respectfully, no," I said. He tried a different door. "Your aunt's wealth came from our family. That first shop, our parents' inheritance. And she spent the next 30 decades building it. 16-hour days, results. What did you build?" My mother's eyes glistened. "We made terrible choices, but we love you." Love is a verb. Show it. The rest of dinner drifted. Apologies with frayed edges, stories with convenient gaps. When we stood, my mother hugged me and whispered, "Think about what family really means, John." The endearment landed heavy. My father squeezed my shoulder, performative and firm. Tomorrow will go better, like a promise he was used to breaking. Outside, the night had cooled. I sat in my car, forehead resting on the steering wheel. Phone buzz. A new voicemail from an unknown number. "Hello, Elaine. My name is Sandra Kelly. I worked at First National Bank 15 years ago where your parents kept their accounts. Please don't sign anything or give them $1 until we speak. I can confirm a transaction you need to know about. Call me." My stomach dropped. Not fear exactly, anticipation. Threads were beginning to show. Back home, the house waited. High ceilings holding their breath, the stairs creaking in the same two places they always had. I walked to Vivien's study and stood in the doorway. The antique desk, the precise stacks, her reading lamp still angled to the left. It felt like she'd just stepped out to take a call. I opened the top drawer. Receipts, sealed envelopes, a fountain pen in its felt cradle. The second drawer held file tabs labeled with her careful hand. Insurance, leases, corporate minutes. The third drawer was locked. I ran a finger under the desk lip more out of habit than hope, and felt the edge of tape. A small brass key came free. The lock turned with that clean, expensive click she always liked. Inside, a single slim folder, labeled in block letters, Winters. For a long moment, I didn't move. Some doors once opened changed the house. I took the folder out, set it on the desk, exhaled. Not tonight, I told myself. Tomorrow, with Harold, with context, with someone who could translate. I slid the folder back, locked the drawer, and tucked the key into my pocket. The house seemed to approve. A soft, settling sound, wood remembering where it belonged. Upstairs, I sat on the edge of my bed and pressed play on the dinner recording. Hearing my parents ask for money in my own voice's silence felt like proof I hadn't imagined the angle. I texted Harold, "Have something," a folder she labeled with my name, and a woman called, Sandra Kelly from First National Bank. She says there was a transaction. Harold's reply came fast, even at that hour. Bring both to the office at 10 a.m. Also, forward me the voicemail. Do not meet your parents again with counsel present. I slept the restless way you do after an earthquake. Everything still standing, nothing in quite the same place. Morning came with a white sky and a certainty in my chest I didn't recognize as courage until later. I dressed in navy again, Vivien's old pearl studs, a tiny armor I could wear. At the door, I hesitated and looked back at the study. "Wish me luck," I said to the quiet room, or maybe to her. Paper unfolds, Rue holds its breath. My name in Vivien's careful hand. I broke the seal. "My dearest Elaine," I read, voice thinner than I felt. "If this letter is open, it means your biological parents have resurfaced, as I always suspected they would after my death. This is not your burden to carry, it is mine, and I have carried it with planning." Pause. Swallow. "Shortly after you came to me, your father demanded a settlement to avoid challenging the guardianship. On counsel's advice, I agreed to a one-time payment and required a signed release of claims. When further demands followed, I refused. I retained a licensed investigator, documented every contact, and instructed my attorney to prepare for the day you would need a fortress." My mother's chair creaked. Mr. Delaney shifted, pen stilled. I continued. 16 was a turning point. You and I appeared in chambers. The judge spoke to you privately. You consented. A guardian ad litem recommended finalization. The court entered a decree. Elaine, you have been my legal daughter since that day. You owe your biological parents nothing but the civility you choose. Harold slid a certified document beside the letter, a stamped decree, docket number, judge's signature. I knew the date, my 16th birthday month. A memory surfaced, a quiet courtroom, a kind-eyed judge asking me if I felt safe, if this was my choice. I had said yes. Of course I had said yes. I kept reading. If anyone attempts to contest my will or the legal status of your adoption, the no contest clause activates and transfers my entire estate to the Hughes Foundation for Abandoned Children. I preferred to nourish rather than punish, but I will not fund manipulation. The final paragraph blurred as my eyes stung. I have not said this enough. Perhaps I never have. I love you. Not because you needed me, but because you became you. Be well, be wise, be happy. Vivien. You once asked what you should call me in legal documents. The answer has always been, Mother. Beat. The room exhales. The word cracked something open in me and put it back together in the same breath. My father's voice came raw. This is theater. You paid us to go away, then you stole our daughter on a technicality. Harold's tone didn't rise. Language matters. A documented release of claims is lawful. The adoption followed statutory requirements. Notice, consent, guardian ad litem, judicial interview. The court found it in Elaine's best interest. Your parental rights were terminated with due process. She is 28. There is no guardianship to reclaim. Mr. Delaney tried another lane. Undue influence. Ms. Hughes controlled access, education, finances. The adoption could be tainted. Harold set 2 exhibits on the table. Number 1, the GAL's report recommending adoption cites Elaine's stated desire and specific safety concerns related to your instability. Number 2, a letter from independent counsel appointed to advise Elaine confirms she understood the consequences and consented freely. He placed 1 more page down, the certified adoption decree, raised seal catching the light. This is not fragile. I felt my own memory fitting into the spaces. A conference room, years ago, a woman lawyer explaining in simple words, "You can say no." Me nodding, then signing. A steadiness in my chest I hadn't understood until now. Harold tapped the folder labeled Calls. For completeness, he said, Ms. Hughes provided recordings of several conversations over the years. He glanced at me. We are in a one-party consent jurisdiction. The recorder was a participant. Mr. Delaney's jaw flexed. We object to the use of any private recordings. Your objection is noted, Harold said, and overruled by the legislature. He plugged the thumb drive into a small speaker. A click. Then a voice that used to tuck me in and later disappeared. My mother on the recording, from years ago. Vivien, if you care for Elaine at all, you'll wire 50. We won't challenge anything. You have my word. Vivien's voice calm as winter sun. A release was signed last time. There will be no further payments. If you attempt contact with Elaine outside counsel, I will seek protective orders. My father's recorded chuckle slithered through the room. You can't keep her from her blood. Vivien, watch me. The clip ended. Silence fell loud. Harold clicked to a second file, a different year, a different ask. This time, just 20, medical bills. The pattern was its own testimony. My father pushed his chair back. You're twisting everything. We were sick. We needed help. I turned the decree toward them so they could see the seal. I did need help. I was 13. She showed up. You didn't. Mr. Delaney leaned in to whisper to them, low and urgent. Then to Harold, we'd like a recess. Harold checked the wall clock. 15 minutes. When we return, we'll finalize transfer mechanics and memorialize that your clients have no standing to supervise or manage anything related to Miss Hughes' estate. He paused, then looked at me. And Elaine will state on the record whether she wishes further contact. My mother's fingers found her locket, twisting metal like a rosary. Elaine, please, she said. We can fix this. I thought of the kitchen timer Vivien used to set for my piano practice, how it would ring and there was no arguing with the bell. Some moments are that clear. We'll see where the truth leaves us, I said. They stepped out into the hall with Mr. Delaney. The camera light kept its watchful red glow. Harold's posture softened as soon as the door clicked shut. You okay? I nodded, then shook my head, then nodded again. She called herself my mother. The word felt right-sized in my mouth. She always did, he said gently. Some of us just needed the paperwork. We both almost smiled. He stacked the exhibits in order, meticulous as always. One more thing, he added. Sandra's email included the subpoena file list. It shows the cashier's check from L. Barker, plus the follow-up wire to a casino cage. We'll subpoena the casino for cage logs if needed. L. Barker, I said. Is that the notary? Possibly. Louise Barker notarized the consent forms. L. Barker remitted the check. Same surname, same initial. Could be coincidence, could be relation. We won't allege what we can't prove, but we will ask the questions under oath if this proceeds. The hallway murmured. Footsteps returned.
Harold lowered the thumb drive cap with a click and looked to me. Last item. Your choice. I inhaled, exhaled, and found my voice. Put on the record that any contact goes through counsel only. No visits, no calls. If they violate it, we pursue a protective order. He nodded, making a neat note. So ordered. The door opened. My parents re-entered, faces set, Mr. Delaney in command mode. We took our seats. Harold turned the page on his legal pad. Back on the record, Ms. Winters has an additional request. I spoke clearly, the way Vivien taught me to read numbers aloud so I didn't misplace a zero. All contact from Mr. and Mrs. Winters must go through counsel. Any attempt to contact me directly will be treated as harassment, and we will seek immediate relief. Mr. Delaney started to object, then read the room. We'll advise our clients to respect that boundary. Good, Harold said. Then there's just one file left to play. He lifted the thumb drive once more. This one's short, but decisive.
My dearest Elaine, I read, voice thinner than I felt. If this letter is open, it means your biological parents have resurfaced, as I always suspected they would after my death. This is not your burden to carry. It is mine, and I have carried it with planning. Shortly after you came to me, your father demanded a settlement to avoid challenging the guardianship. On counsel's advice, I agreed to a one-time payment and required a signed release of claims. When further demands followed, I refused. I retained a licensed investigator, documented every contact, and instructed my attorney to prepare for the day you would need a fortress. My mother's chair creaked. Mr. Delaney shifted, pen stilled. I continued. 16 was a turning point. You and I appeared in chambers. The judge spoke to you privately. You consented. A guardian ad litem recommended finalization. The court entered a decree. Elaine, you have been my legal daughter since that day. You owe your biological parents nothing but the civility you choose. Harold slid a certified document beside the letter, a stamped decree, docket number, judge's signature. I knew the date. My 16th birthday month. A memory surfaced. A quiet courtroom, a kind-eyed judge asking if I felt safe, if this was my choice. I had said yes. Of course I had said yes. I kept reading. If anyone attempts to contest my will or the legal status of my adoption, the no contest clause activates and transfers my entire estate to the Hughes Foundation for Abandoned Children. I prefer to nourish rather than punish, but I will not fund manipulation. The final paragraph blurred as my eyes stung. I have not said this enough. Perhaps I never have. I love you, not because you needed me, but because you became you. Be well, be wise, be happy. Vivien, you once asked what you should call me in legal documents. The answer has always been Mother. The word cracked something open in me and put it back together, in the same breath. My father's voice came raw. This is theater. You paid us to go away, then you stole our daughter on a technicality. Harold's tone didn't rise. Language matters. A documented release of claims is lawful. The adoption followed statutory requirements: notice, consent, guardian ad litem, judicial interview. The court found it in Elaine's best interest. Your parental rights were terminated with due process. She is 28. There is no guardianship to reclaim. Mr. Delaney tried another lane. Undue influence. Misuse controlled access, education, finances. The adoption could be tainted. Harold set 2 exhibits on the table. 1, the gal's report recommending adoption cites Elaine's stated desire and specific safety concerns related to your instability. 2, a letter from independent counsel appointed to advise Elaine confirms she understood the consequences and consented freely. He placed one more page down, the certified adoption decree, raised seal catching the light. I felt my own memory fitting into the spaces. A conference room years ago, a woman lawyer explaining in simple words, you can say no.
me nodding and then signing, a steadiness in my chest I hadn't understood until now. Harold tapped the folder labeled Calls. For completeness, he said, Miss Hughes provided recordings of several conversations over the years. He glanced at me. We're in a one-party consent jurisdiction. The recorder was a participant. Mr. Delaney's jaw flexed. We object to the use of any private recordings. Your objection is noted and overruled by the legislature. He plugged the thumb drive into a small speaker, a click, then a voice that used to tuck me in and later disappeared. My mother on the recording from years ago. Vivien, if you care for Elaine at all, you'll wire 50. We won't challenge anything. You have my word. Vivien's voice calm as winter sun. A release was signed last time. There will be no further payments. If you attempt contact with Elaine outside counsel, I will seek protective orders. My father's recorded chuckle slithered through the room. You can't keep her from her blood. Vivien, watch me. The clip ended. Silence fell loud. He clicked to a second file. A different year, a different ask. This time, just 20 medical bills. The pattern was its own testimony. My father pushed his chair back. You're twisting everything. We were sick. We needed help. I turned the decree toward them so they could see the seal. I did need help. I was 13. She showed up. You didn't. Mr. Delaney leaned in to whisper to them, low and urgent. Then, to Harold, we'd like a recess. Harold checked the wall clock. 15 minutes. When we return, we'll finalize transfer mechanics and memorialize that your clients have no standing to supervise or manage anything related to Miss Hughes's estate. He paused, then looked at me. And Elaine will state on the record whether she wishes further contact. My mother's fingers found her locket, twisting metal like a rosary. Elaine, please, she said, we can fix this. I thought of the kitchen timer Vivien used to set for my piano practice, how it would ring and there was no arguing with the bell. Some moments are that clear. We'll see where the truth leaves us, I said. They stepped out into the hall with Mr. Delaney. The camera light kept its watchful red glow. Harold's posture softened as soon as the door clicked shut. Okay. I nodded, then shook my head, then nodded again. She called herself my mother. The word felt right-sized in my mouth. She always did, he said gently. Some of us just needed the paperwork. We both almost smiled. He stacked the exhibits, in order, meticulous as always. One more thing, he added. Sandra's email included the subpoena file list. It shows the cashier's check from L. Barker plus the follow-up wire to a casino cage. We'll subpoena the casino for cage logs if needed. L. Barker, I said. Is that the notary? Possibly. Louise Barker notarized the consent forms. L. Barker remitted the check. Same surname, same initial. Could be coincidence, could be relation. We won't allege what we can't prove, but we will ask the questions under oath if this proceeds. The hallway murmured. Footsteps returned. Harold lowered the thumb drive cap with a click and looked to me. Last item, he said. Your choice. I inhaled, exhaled, and found my voice. Put on the record that any contact goes through counsel only. No visits, no calls. If they violate it, we pursue a protective order. He nodded, making a neat note. So ordered. The door opened. My parents re-entered, faces set, Mr. Delaney in command mode. We took our seats. Harold turned the page on his legal pad. Back on the record, Miss Winters has an additional request. I spoke clearly, the way Vivien taught me to read numbers aloud so I didn't misplace a zero. All contact from Mr. and Mrs. Winters must go through counsel. Any attempt to contact me directly will be treated as harassment, and we will seek immediate relief. Mr. Delaney started to object, then read the room. We'll advise our clients to respect that boundary. Good, Harold said. Then there's just one file left to play. He lifted the thumb drive once more, this one short but decisive.
Harold nodded to me, then pressed play. My father's voice filled the room, younger, cockier. Yeah, the 15 posted this morning. Louise says the release is airtight. We won't step into court. Not if you keep your end.
money, name, intent, all in one breath. Mr. Delaney shifted, pen frozen midair. Context? He asked weakly. Harold's tone stayed even. Context is in the bank record Miss Kelly referenced, the notary journal with Louise Barker logged as the notary, and your client's own words tying 15 Luis and release to non-interference. That, paired with the adoption decree, ends the argument. My father's jaw worked. We were desperate. She leveraged our crisis. Miss Hughes avoided litigation and documented a settlement. When further demands came, she declined. That's lawful. What's unlawful is extortion. We're not alleging that today, but I remind you that the line exists. Mr. Delaney cleared his throat. We'll need to review all media and originals. You'll receive copies and custodian affidavits, Harold said. Today's goal is narrower. Acknowledge you have no standing to supervise or manage Miss Hughes's estate, and agree all contact goes through counsel only. It protects everyone. My mother finally spoke, voice small. We don't want her money. We want a chance. I looked at the decree's raised seal again, then at her locket. Chances start with boundaries. Respect them first. Harold slid a short stipulation across the table. This memorandum simply reflects the obvious. Elaine is the sole beneficiary. My office will handle transfers. Your clients acknowledge they have no supervisory role, and all contact goes through counsel only. It protects everyone. Mr. Delaney read it, lips moving. He leaned toward my parents, whispered, then said aloud, We'll take it under advisement and respond in writing. Harold didn't press. Very well. Then, on the record, any challenge to the will or adoption triggers the no contest clause and transfers the entire estate to the Hughes Foundation for Abandoned Children. Additionally, frivolous filings may draw sanctions. Choose wisely. My father stood so fast his chair scraped. You think you've won. I think Elaine has clarity, Harold said. We adjourned. The camera light went dark. In the hall, my mother reached for me. I stepped back. Please, we're trying, she whispered. Try respecting my no, I said quietly. They left with Mr. Delaney, the elevator swallowing their reflections. Harold exhaled. You did well. I pressed my palms to the cool cable. That clip, it tied everything. It did. And Sandra's file number is gold. We'll request certified copies of the deposit and check image from the court record. Also, we'll send a courtesy letter to the notary board regarding Louise Barker's potential conflict. No accusations, just facts. I nodded. What now? Now we transfer assets, change locks, update account permissions, and set security. I'll also arrange a patrol pass on the house for a few weeks. If they show up, you don't open the door. Call me, then call 911. We handled logistics the way Vivien would have liked. Quickly, precisely. Title affidavits queued, corporate resolutions drafted, bank authorizations updated with my signature. Harold's paralegal walked me through digital tokens and two-factor keys. Protection, but the practical kind. By noon, Sandra's follow-up email hit. Subpoena docket, list of exhibits, date stamps. Harold forwarded me the court's response form. We'll get certified copies in a few days. We don't need them to act today. As I stood to leave, Harold hesitated. One personal note, if you'll allow it. I braced. He softened. Vivien didn't just build a fortress. She built a family. She named me your godfather when you were 16. His smile was small, unpracticed. I'm at your service beyond the paperwork. Something in my chest loosened. Thank you. He handed me a card with a second number on the back. This one is direct.
patrol car idles, soft blue wash across the porch. An officer stepped out, posture relaxed but unmistakably present. He took in the scene, my half-latched door, my father's palm on the wood, my mother twisting her locket until the chain whispered. "Everything okay here?" he asked, voice neutral. "My parents were asked to leave," I said. "All communication is through counsel." My father's smile was tight. "We're family, officer. 5 minutes. She's being dramatic." The officer glanced at the door chain, then at the camera above us. "Sir, her home, her rules. If she says leave, you leave." My father tried the reasonable voice. "We flew in from Arizona. We're just trying to sort things out. There's a lot on her plate. She inherited a company, a house, millions. All we're asking is a little help to get current. $100,000 and we're gone. That's nothing to her." There it was, the word that stripped the story down to bone. Money. The officer's pen clicked. "I'm going to document that. Now I need IDs." He took their licenses, noted the numbers, and handed them back. "Here's what happens next. This is a trespass warning. You are being advised, on camera, not to return or contact her directly. Any further attempt can become a criminal matter. Understood?" My mother nodded quickly. My father hesitated, then exhaled. "Understood." He looked at me, trying one last door. "We can tell our side if you force us to. The press loves a family feud." The officer lifted a brow. "Not helpful, sir." I kept my voice level. "Please leave." They did, slowly, the way people do when they want it noted that they're leaving under protest. The patrol car followed them to the corner and paused until their taillights disappeared. Inside, I locked the door, then called Harold on speaker. "They asked for $100,000 and were gone on camera," I said. "That's the line. We move now. I'll draft an ex parte civil harassment restraining order. We'll attach your porch footage, the text message, and the dinner audio. A process server will handle service on them and their counsel. If they violate the order, the police will have clear grounds." He texted me a link. "Complete this declaration. I'll file within the hour." We worked like a well-rehearsed team. I uploaded the video clip, the dinner recording, screenshots of their texts. By late afternoon, Harold called back. "Judge signed a temporary order," he said. "No contact, no third-party contact, 500-foot stay away. Hearing in 3 weeks. My server is en route to their hotel." "What about the notary, Louise Barker?" I asked. "Letter to the state notary board goes out tonight, requesting they review potential conflict and journal compliance. Fax only." My phone buzzed again. Mr. Delaney. I let it go to voicemail and forwarded it to Harold. He called a minute later. "They're proposing a mutual non-contact and a private settlement. One-time payment, non-disparagement, NDA." I stared out at the porch, where blue light had washed the railings. No hush money, no NDA. If they want peace, they can follow the order and stop lying. "Agreed," he said. "I'll reject without counter." The process server texted Harold a photo of the served papers. My parents in a hotel hallway, envelopes in hand, surprise still on their faces. A timestamp, a signature, clean service. That evening, I walked the house like I always did when my nerves needed a job. Window latches, alarm panel, backdoor deadbolt. I checked the small red LED on the foyer camera, still blinking, still watching. Vivien had installed the system after their first demand years ago. I had upgraded it. The quiet hum of it calmed me. Not paranoia, just proof. In the kitchen, I set the old brass timer for 8 minutes and made tea. Water, then kettle, then leaves. The ritual stitched the day into a straight line. When the timer rang, I opened my laptop to an email from Harold labeled Foundation Notes. A single paragraph at the end of Vivien's will had caught his eye.
Her intent that, failing all else, her estate would support children forced to build themselves twice. I read that phrase 3 times. Forced to build themselves twice. It felt like a benediction and a blueprint. Phone buzzed, unknown local number. "Hello," I answered. A warm, gravelly voice. "Elaine, this is Margaret Chen at the City Ledger. I received a tip about a story involving you and your late aunt. Before we run anything, I wanted to offer you comment. Off the record for now, if you prefer." I closed my eyes for a second. "Who tipped you?" "I can't say, but they alleged your aunt bought your adoption and cut your parents out. They suggested there were business irregularities at her company." The smear. Right on schedule. "Miss Chen, off the record. I have a certified adoption decree, a no contest clause, and recordings that contradict that narrative. If someone is trying to sell you a family feud, they're leaving out the law." She chuckled softly. "I suspected as much. We knew Miss Hughes. She donated to our newsroom internship fund for years, anonymously, but we figured it out. If you'd like to send a short statement, we'll run it verbatim, or we can hold the piece. I'll have my attorney send you documents, on the record." "Do," she replied. "Also, for transparency, your caller used a Phoenix area code and said the words "our cut" twice." I smiled without humor. "That tracks." We hung up. I forwarded her email to Harold with a brief note. "Press, Phoenix area code, our cut." His reply was immediate. "I'll send a package, decree, stipulation, RO, plus a short statement. We'll also put Delaney on notice that further false statements trigger defamation exposure." I set the phone down and looked around the kitchen. Vivien's house, my house, had a way of keeping its balance, even on days like this. Upstairs, I passed the study and paused. The Winters folder was locked away again, but its contents had rearranged my past into something that made sense. I thought of 16-year-old me sitting in chambers, saying yes to a life that asked more of me, but also gave me more back. Doorbell, a single polite chime. My body went cold, then warm. I checked the camera. Not my parents. A courier, holding a slim envelope with Harold's firm's seal. I signed, opened it at the kitchen counter. Inside, a copy of the temporary restraining order, the case number circled, the hearing date underlined. Beneath it, a handwritten note from Harold. "You are not alone. HT." I pressed my palm on the paper, as if to anchor it to the table or myself to the moment.
The next day at 9:03 a.m., my phone rang. "Mr. Delaney." "Elaine," he began, smooth as glass. "If you won't help your parents, the public might. People care about family. You could look ungrateful." I let the silence work for me. "Did they mention the adoption?" I asked. "The decree with the raised seal? The judge's signature? My consent at 16? A beat, paper, rustle. "We're aware of documents," he said, carefully. "There are still optics. You inherited millions. They're asking for stability." "You mean cash?" I said. "And there's a restraining order. Any further contact is a violation. Also, your clients have begun feeding a false narrative to the press. If that continues, we'll pursue defamation remedies." "Let's not escalate," he said quickly. "A private settlement, NDA." "No hush money," I said. "Boundaries aren't escalation, they're safety." He exhaled, disappointed the script wasn't working. "We'll be in touch." We hung up. I forwarded the call summary to Harold. Sandra Kelly's follow-up arrived with a court link. She'd found the subpoena file. Scanned image of a cashier's check remitted by L. Barker, memo release of claims, family settlement, and the deposit slip stamped the day after the notary appointment. Below it, an outgoing wire to a Las Vegas casino cage 1 week later. The dates lined up like train cars. I sent everything to Harold. His reply, certified copies ordered, also notary board acknowledges receipt. Preliminary review opened on Miss Louise Barker. No conclusions, just process. I breathed out a knot I didn't realize I'd tied. By noon, Margaret Chen from the Ledger emailed a draft, a short, factual note. Adoption of E.M. Winters finalized at age 16 per court records. Will includes no contest clause benefiting Hughes Foundation for abandoned children if contested. No evidence of corporate irregularities. She'd quote my statement and Harold's. No editorializing, just light. Run it, I wrote back. Thank you. You'd be surprised how often family tipsters leave out context. This won't be that story. For the first time in days, the house felt like it had exhaled. I answered emails, approved a spring campaign mock-up, ate toast over the sink like a civilian. The timer ticked away 18 tea minutes, and for once, they felt like mine. Doorbell, 2 sharp chimes. I froze, then checked the porch cam on my phone. Arizona plates. Same car. My parents on the steps. Mr. Delaney nowhere in sight. My heartbeat went calm, strangely calm. I hit record on the porch feed, dialed 911, and spoke softly. Temporary restraining order in effect. 2 subjects violating. Address is units en route, the dispatcher said. I walked to the door and flipped the chain, opened it 3 inches. You're violating a court order, I said. My father's smile was frayed. We just want to talk. No lawyers. All communication goes through counsel. Leave now. You read the article, my mother blurted, eyes bright with anger. Do you know how humiliating that is? Do you know what people will think? That I was adopted at 16 with my consent? Yes, that's accurate. My father leaned closer. You can make this go away. 100. We disappear. You won't hear from us again. You said that yesterday, and here you are. Because you owe us, he hissed, the mask slipping. There it was, the phrase he couldn't help saying. Step away from the door. He pressed his palm flat against the wood, pushing it an inch. The chain held. He slipped his fingers through the gap and caught my wrist. Pain, flared bright and mean. I yanked back. The chain clinked. The camera blinked red. The siren wailed somewhere close. And the steady part of me, the part Vivien raised, took over. Let go, I said, even, measured. You are being recorded. There is an active order. Tires whispered against the curb. Blue pulsed over the porch rail. An officer's shadow cut across the steps. Hands where I can see them, he said, voice professional, posture squared. My father dropped my wrist like it burned. The officer glanced at the camera, then at me. You okay? Yes, I said. Pulse racing, but voice steady. He grabbed me through the chain. To confirm, the officer said, body cam angled, there is a valid TRO. Yes, I said, lifting the envelope Harold had couriered over. Case number is highlighted. The officer read it, then keyed his shoulder mic. Confirming active temporary protective order, case number, he repeated it. The radio crackled back. Order is active and was served yesterday, 1700 hours. My father tried the reasonable voice one more time. Officer, this is a misunderstanding. We were leaving. We just needed to speak. After you touched her, the officer said. After you approached her home in violation of an order. He looked at me. Do you want to press charges for violation and battery? We can take a report and issue a cite now, or we can arrest. Your choice. I breathed in, out. The part of me that wanted everything to be over wrestled with the part that understood how boundaries are built, one enforced line at a time. Document the violation and the grab. Issue the cite. If they come back, we arrest. The officer nodded. Copy. He took statements, photographed my wrist, had me email the porch footage to the station. He wrote the cite, explained the conditions again, clearly, slowly, and handed my parents their copies. This is non-negotiable. You return, you go to jail. You contact her, you go to jail. Understood? My mother nodded, eyes glassy. My father stared at the paper like he could will it blank. Understood, he said, finally. They backed down the steps. At the walkway, my father turned, anger a last flicker. You'll regret this when you're alone. Money won't hold you at night. I met his gaze. You're right, I said. People do. The officer's cruiser idled until their taillights vanished. He came back to the porch. We'll add extra drive-bys. If anything feels off, call. Don't open the door. Thank you, I said. Inside, I locked the deadbolt and stared at my wrist, a red crescent blooming where his fingers had been. I took a photo, then ran it under cool water. The house was very quiet. For a moment, I wanted to be 16 again, with Vivien's calm in the next room. Then I remembered, I had been raised for this. Not for confrontation, exactly, for clarity. I texted Harold, violation. He grabbed my wrist through the chain. Officer cited, footage and photos sent. Hearing date in 3 weeks still stands. His reply came fast. Got it. We'll file a supplemental declaration and request to convert to a long-term order, also notifying Delaney any further contact is arrest. I set the phone down and leaned against the counter. The kettle hissed, the timer ticked, the house held. If you think boundaries are love in action, comment boundaries below. It helps more people find the story, and it tells me you're still here.
We met in a pale hallway that smelled like paper and coffee. Harold reviewed our packet. Adoption decree, bank exhibits, porch video, dinner audio, TRO, and Sandra's affidavit. Mr. Delaney stood with my parents a few yards away, whispering strategy into the noise. Win or lose, Harold murmured, today is about clarity. Clarity's a win, I said. Win enough, he corrected, almost smiling. Next matter, the clerk called. We stepped into a courtroom bathed in morning light. The judge was brisk, attentive. Petitioner seeks a long-term civil harassment restraining order, she summarized, following a temporary order issued ex parte. Alleged violations include unsolicited contact and physical grabbing through a chained door. Parties are present with counsel. Let's proceed. Harold rose. Your Honor, we'll be brief. He outlined the facts, years of abandonment, recent reappearance coinciding with the will, a pattern demand for money documented by recorded calls, bank records corroborating a $15,000 release of claims family settlement, a notarized consent converting guardianship to adoption at 16, and 2 incidents in 48 hours, a porch solicitation, $100,000 and we're gone, and a violation resulting in a battery through the chain. We're in a one-party consent jurisdiction, and we've submitted custodian affidavits for all media. He played the short clips. The courtroom absorbed the sounds of the past. My mother promising not to challenge, my father bragging to someone named Louise, the porch phrase, our cut, my own voice saying, even as my wrist was held, you are being recorded. There is an active order. Mr. Delaney stood. Your Honor, emotions run high in families. My clients regret their missteps. They deny extortion. They sought inclusion, not harassment. They contest the characterization of the bank memo and the intent behind it. The judge peered over her glasses. Counsel, I'll ask both of your clients a question, and I suggest they answer honestly. She turned to my parents. If this were about family, why does every road in this record lead to money? Silence spread like a stain. My father started to speak, then stopped. My mother clutched her locket. The judge continued, voice calm but edged. You approached her at a law office to suggest guardianship over a 28-year-old. You asked for $100,000 and we're gone. You returned after a temporary order, put your hand on her door, reached through the chain, and grabbed her wrist. That is not family, that is coercion. Mr. Delaney tried. Your Honor, she lifted a palm. I've heard enough. The adoption is valid. The will is valid. Petitioner is a competent adult. I'm granting the restraining order for 3 years, no contact, direct or indirect, no third-party contact, no social media messages, no showing up at her home or workplace or the places she's known to frequent. Stay 500 feet away at all times. She looked at the bailiff. Advise them on firearms restrictions. The bailiff stepped forward. Standard prohibition applies. If you own firearms, you must surrender per statute and file proof. The judge added, Court finds a willful violation of the temporary order and a battery. I'm imposing civil penalties and ordering respondents to pay petitioner's filing fees. Petitioner's attorney's fees is reserved. If there's another violation, I'll revisit it with vigor. My mother's shoulders shook once. My father's jaw clenched, the muscle in his cheek working like it could grind the order into dust. The judge glanced at me. Ms. Winters, anything to add? Yes, Your Honor, I said, steady. I want peace. This isn't punishment. It's safety. Understood, she said. Order will issue today. Gavel tap. Soft but final. Outside the hallway hummed again. A reporter I recognized, Margaret Chen, stood by the water cooler, notepad tucked away. She caught my eye and gave a small nod that read, You're covered. No ambush. Mr. Delaney guided my parents toward the elevators. My father glanced back. The bailiff's presence at his shoulder reminded him of the boundary he'd just been handed. He kept walking. Harold and I sat on a bench while the clerk printed certified copies. He slid one across to me. The bold line, restraining order, 3 years, wasn't victory. It was a fence. Fences keep things in and out. Mostly, they clarify the property line. Harold cleared his throat. 2 quick notes. First, the notary board acknowledged they've opened a preliminary review on Ms. Louise Barker's journal and any potential conflict. No conclusions. Second, the court clerk confirmed the bank record images are certified and ready to pick up. We'll add them to the archive, and then, unless they do something reckless, we close this chapter. Do they ever stop? I asked. Sometimes, when the incentives change. Forced to build themselves twice, I murmured, hearing Vivien's words again. Harold's owls warned. She was careful with phrases, meant them to last. We left the courthouse into a day turning bright. Outside the steps, a charity group had set up a table with pamphlets about mentoring youth. A teenage girl in a yellow hoodie was laughing with her friend. Life kept happening with or without the courtroom. Back home, the house received me the way it always did, with a quiet that wasn't empty. The air held the faint scent of lemon oil and old books. I put the certified order into the safe, texted the patrol sergeant the update, and forwarded the PDF to Margaret, whose reply came 2 words. Understood, respectfully. Evening settles. Lamps click on. I walked past the study, then stopped. Something tugged at me. Not the Winters folder, already back in its place, but a curiosity I'd dismissed. Vivien's bedroom nightstand. I hadn't opened it since the funeral. Grief makes rooms into museums. Time makes them homes again. I turned on her bedside lamp. The drawer had a soft close, a detail Vivien loved. Quiet mechanisms, intentional motions. Inside, a small wooden box I'd somehow never noticed. Walnut, smooth from years of hands. The lid was simple, the hinge whisper quiet. Inside, a stack of things that widened the room. Old report cards, my 3rd grade photo with the gap-toothed smile, a program from my high school recital, the graduation brochure with my name circled. Beneath them, an envelope with my name, not in her legal hand, but in her private one. Rounder letters. Human. Vulnerable. I sat on the edge of her bed. The lamp's pool of light made an island out of the quilt. I broke the seal and unfolded the paper. Elaine, it began, without any legal phrasing at all. I have never been good at saying what I feel. It is a defect learned from a different era. So I will write it plainly. I love you. I loved you when your voice shook at 13 and when it steadied at 16. I loved you on the days we argued and the days we ate soup in silence. You are not my obligation. You are my joy. My eyes burned. I kept reading. I signed the adoption papers because I wanted the world to see what I already knew. I worried I had made you too careful. If that is true, then let this be the permission you did not ask for. Be bold, be kind, and be unafraid to choose your own family. The signature was one word. Not Vivien, not aunt, not even mother. It was simply mom. The word clicked into place like the soft closed drawer. No debate, no performance. Just the right mechanics finally used.
6 months changed the landscape without changing the map. The restraining order held. No calls, no porch, no just 5 minutes. Mr. Delaney sent 2 curt emails about healing privately, then went quiet. The city ledger ran Margaret Chen's piece, restrained, factual, boring in the way truth often is. The smear withered in daylight. Harold kept me updated in tidy bullet points. Notary board. Preliminary review on Miss Louise Barker, closed with a formal reprimand for journal deficiencies and undisclosed conflict. Her commission status? Suspended pending corrective education. No criminal findings, just consequences. Bank records. Certified images filed under seal and archived. Subpoena file closed. Police. Log shows 1 citation issued for TRO violation. No further incidents. Press. Delaney warned that further false statements trigger defamation exposure. No further tips. Consequences don't always look like fireworks. Sometimes they look like systems doing what they're supposed to. Life filled the space the drama left. At the company, we launched spring campaigns Vivien would have argued with and then secretly admired. We piloted a same-day pickup program and redesigned 2 stores with lighter floors and warmer light. Sales ticked up. Morale did too. In a staff meeting, Monique from procurement said, "You manage like Miss Hughes. Decisive, fair, a little scary in a good way." I laughed. It was the best compliment I had in months. The house shifted toward me. I painted the study a shade warmer, kept the velvet curtains, replaced 2 too formal chairs with ones you could actually sit in. Mrs. Bentley still came twice a week, moving through rooms with the quiet authority of someone who had outlasted owners. We settled into our ritual. Tea at the kitchen table, 8 minutes on the brass timer, gossip restrained to kind observations and plant updates. The foundation took shape, not as a grand gesture, but as a machine that works. We named it after her, the Vivien Hughes Foundation, and set our motto to the phrase from her will, for children forced to build themselves twice. In 3 months, we funded 20 therapy scholarships, 5 emergency rent grants for teens aging out of care, and a laptop bank for students starting community college. On a Tuesday, a 19-year-old named Maya cried over a $600 check that kept her in her apartment. On a Thursday, a 23-year-old named Devin emailed, "I thought help like this was for other people. Thank you for proving me wrong." Dr. Freeman and I kept our appointments. We moved from triage to architecture. She said, "Grief and anger are both forms of love. Boundaries protect what you care about. That includes your peace." On a mild afternoon, I met Sandra Kelly for coffee. She wore a denim jacket and the expression of someone who had seen too much and chosen kindness anyway. "You didn't have to get involved," I told her. "I did, actually," she said, smiling. "Once those records went public, the right thing was obvious. Also, I like putting receipts in order." We laughed. She sipped, then added, "I've seen families untangle money in all the wrong ways. It's rare to see someone untangle it with law and grace. Your aunt would be proud." I said, "She is," surprising myself with the tense. We hugged in the parking lot, 2 strangers stitched together by a memo line and a choice to tell the truth. A week later, Harold's office forwarded a letter from Arizona. It arrived properly, through counsel, respecting the order. My name on the envelope in my mother's hand. I carried it to the porch and sat on the steps, the wood warm under my legs. I opened it slowly,
The way you open a door you aren't sure you want to walk through. It began, Elaine, I am writing through Mr. Delaney to respect your boundary. I won't say I understand how you feel. I don't. I'm starting to understand what we did. I told myself for years that we left you with Vivien because it was better for you. That story made me feel less monstrous. The truth is, we also left because we were cowards. We chose the path that hurt least in the moment and most in the long run. I am sorry. This is not a request for money or contact. If you ever want to hear me say this out loud, I will. In a therapist's office, with your attorney present, or not at all. If not, I will respect your no. S. No asks, no bargain, no our cut, just accountability in ink. I read it twice and put it back in the envelope. Boundaries don't erase compassion. They make it possible. I placed the letter in the desk drawer with Vivien's, Mom's note. Not answered, not ignored. Neither rejected nor embraced, Dr. Freeman would say. Held. Harold called that evening, his voice lighter than it had been in months. Clocks are ticking on good things, he said. We're through probate. Title transfers recorded, corporate resolutions done, foundation bylaw signed. Thank you, I said, for everything. He cleared his throat. Your thanks are accepted, and not required. We started a new rhythm. First Friday dinners. He'd bring a bottle of something dry. I'd cook something Vivien taught me to make by taste. Lemon chicken with capers, a salad that respected the lettuce. He told me stories from being a young associate under Vivien's exacting eye. She taught me to put verbs where they belong, in contracts and in life. Mrs. Bentley began to tell me stories too. One afternoon, as we folded napkins, she said, Your aunt pretended she wasn't scared when you came. But the first night, I found her at the computer at 3 a.m, ordering every book about teenagers the internet would sell. She told me, if I can learn supply chains, I can learn a child. We laughed and I had to sit down. The company's summer launch went live. Simple linens, tactile ceramics, rooms that looked like they had souls. The campaign tagline read, Make your home the place you choose. A copywriter came up with it. I signed off because it felt like the truth. One evening, I went on a second date with someone kind who asked good questions and didn't flinch when I said, My parents are alive, but I have a restraining order. He nodded and said, Thank you for telling me. That was all. It was enough. I still sometimes woke up at 3 a.m. listening for a footstep that would not come. Grief has long fingers. But the panic had faded to a memory of itself. The house hummed its steady hum. The timer rang its 8 minutes. The study's warmer paint caught the morning sun. If the Foundation's mission speaks to you, comment, build twice. It helps push the story to people who might need it. That weekend, I visited the cemetery with fresh flowers. Her stone was simple, black granite, the lettering exact. I had added one word beneath her name, Mother. Standing there, I realized something I'd been circling for months. Family isn't who claims you when there's money. It's who claims you when there isn't. I traced the letters with my thumb and whispered, I'm okay. The wind moved through the trees like an answer.
I started noticing the small anchors I'd been standing on without naming. The house held them like secrets that weren't trying to hide. Mrs. Bentley, for one. She moved through rooms with the quiet certainty of a metronome. One Tuesday, she brought a small plastic bin from the attic. Thought you should have these, she said, setting it on the kitchen table. Inside were binders, actual 3-ring binders, labeled in Vivien's tidy script. Elaine, 13 to 16. Elaine, 17 to 21. Elaine, 22 to now. I laughed through a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. She made volumes? I asked. She made systems, Mrs. Bentley corrected, smiling. The binders weren't grand. They were receipts from pizza after my first recital. Quote, 2 slices, extra napkins, unquote. A copy of my learner's permit, a list of colleges I toured with tiny pros and cons scribbles, dried ticket stubs from a museum day we took when I bombed a midterm. In the 22 to now binder, There was a printout of my first marketing campaign deck with a sticky note. Quote, "Good headline, trim slide 7, unquote. She was watching, I said softly. She was present, Mrs. Bentley said. Watching is passive. We poured tea, set the brass timer for 8 minutes, and sat. Mrs. Bentley told me a story I hadn't heard. First week you came, I found her at 3 a.m., clicking buy on a dozen child psychology books. She told me, if I can learn supply chains, I can learn a child. Her voice shook when she said it. Then she got up at 6 and made you eggs like she'd been doing it for years. I could see it. The posture, the pearls, the tremor no one was supposed to notice. Love in a language that was all verbs. At the company, I was practicing my verbs too. We were mid-renegotiation with a legacy vendor when their rep called. "Is there a man on your team who handles the real numbers?" he asked, cheerful, oblivious. "You're speaking to her," I said, not unkindly. "Here are the numbers." I sent the updated terms with clean columns and firm deadlines. We signed the next afternoon. Monique walked past my office and grinned. Vivien would have said, "Put verbs where they belong." I grinned back. Harold already did. First Friday, Harold came for dinner, with a bottle of something crisp and a small velvet box. "This is technically yours," he said, setting it on the table. I was holding it until you weren't just surviving. Inside lay Vivien's fountain pen, heavy, balanced, familiar. I remembered it in her hand as she signed contracts, wrote checks, left notes on my homework that read, "Too many adjectives." I lifted it out, the weight like a handshake. "She used it to sign your adoption papers," Harold said gently. "Thought you should know." I sat down. She never said," I whispered. "She thought telling you the feeling was more important than telling you the fact. And sometimes she forgot to do either." He raised his glass. "To verbs." I echoed, and the toast felt like a promise I intended to keep. Dating re-entered my life like a cautious guest. The kind man with good questions, his name was Sam, asked if I'd like to try a new noodle place, where the tables were carved with bad poetry. We laughed too hard at a haiku about tax season. On our third date, he asked, "Do you want me to know the headlines or the details?" I took a breath. "Headlines for now, details if we make it to 5 dates." "Copy," he said, like we were aligning on a brief. When I told him about the restraining order, he didn't flinch. He asked, "What does support look like to you? Text me when you get home? Sit by the door during dinner? Or just listen?" I said, "Ask before hugging when I look far away." He nodded. Deal. Boundaries, I realized, could be a love language. Therapy shifted from emergency triage to architecture. Dr. Freeman introduced a phrase I wrote on a sticky note and put on the study lamp. Compassion without access. It let me hold my mother's letter and not open my door. The foundation kept doing small, good things that added up. We funded therapy sessions that gave a 19-year-old language for panic, paid a community college deposit that turned maybe into I Start Monday. We held a tiny open house, 30 chairs, lemonade that was too tart, a slideshow of the first quarter's impact. I wore the pearl studs and stood behind a lectern that felt like it belonged to somebody older than I was. I said, some of us had to build ourselves twice. The first time, we used whatever we found. The second time, we use what we choose. People nodded like they'd been waiting to hear it. Maybe I had. If actions are better than words for you too, comment actions. It helps this story travel to someone who needs it. One night, late, I went back into Vivien's study to return the fountain pen to its felt cradle.
A thin envelope had slid forward from the back of the drawer, hiding between dividers. My name on the front, but not the legal hand, the personal one. In the bottom corner, small letters, "Open when ready." I turned it over in my hands, the paper soft from years of waiting. I wasn't sure what ready meant. 16-year-old me would have opened it then and there, starving for any sentence that sounded like promise. 28-year-old me set it back in the drawer and closed it gently. "Soon," I said to the air, or to her. Sam texted, "Home okay?" I sent a photo of the timer and the tea. He replied with a string of noodle emojis that somehow said more than words. Harold emailed, subject line, "Titles and firsts. Probate closed, titles recorded, first quarter foundation report attached. Proud of you." No exclamation points. He didn't need them. I sat at the desk and uncapped the fountain pen. It moved across paper like it remembered me. I wrote a note to Mrs. Bentley thanking her for the binders and the stories, and another to Sandra Kelly thanking her for choosing receipts over rumors. Verbs, placed where they belong. Elaine made the study's new paint look warmer, like the walls were leaning in. I thought of my mother's letter in the drawer, not a key, not a trap, just an object that could be held without being used. Compassion without access. I thought of my father's hand on my wrist, the crescent it left, and the line I drew. Boundaries without revenge. In bed, I read 2 pages of a book Vivien had dog-eared, a biography of someone who built something honest and difficult. She'd underlined a sentence, "Keep your tools clean." I smiled. I'd added, "Even the invisible ones." If you've learned to set a boundary and still keep your heart open, comment "soft and strong."
Morning hush. A drawer whispers open. The envelope had waited long enough. Open when ready, she'd written in her rounder hand. Today it felt like an instruction, not a dare. I sat at the study desk, uncapped the fountain pen just to feel its weight, then set it aside and broke the seal. Inside, a single sentence in navy ink. "You owe the past compassion, not access." I read it again. The words clicked into place the way her soft-closed drawers did, firm, quiet, inevitable. It wasn't permission to be cruel. It was permission to be clear. Dr. Freeman had given me a phrase. Vivien, Mom, gave me a law. I pulled a blank card and wrote carefully, simply, "Received your letter. Accountability noted. I am not ready for contact. Please continue to respect the order. I wish you health." I sent it to Harold to forward through counsel. Compassion without a door key. The day turned bright and oddly weightless. I carried the sentence with me like a smooth stone in my pocket. Later. Car door shuts, gravel crunches. At the cemetery, the stonecutter stood with a stencil and steady hands. I'd placed the work order weeks ago. Today they finished the engraving. He peeled back the film, brushed away grit, and stepped aside. Beneath her name, the new word looked like it had always been there. Mother. I touched the letters. Not a title she'd claimed out loud, but a role she performed with frightening, faithful precision. The stone didn't make it true. It acknowledged what already was. I set flowers, said thank you twice, once to the air, once to myself, and let the quiet do its work. First Friday. Plates clink, a bottle opens. Harold arrived at 7 with citrus and good news. Probate closed, Foundation's EIN approved, first audit engagement letter signed. He slid a thin folder across the table. Also, the notary board's action on Miss Barker went final. Suspension with mandatory education. The system moved. I said, consequences without drama. Vivien would approve. He said, she liked outcomes, not noise, almost smiling. We ate lemon chicken and a salad that respected the lettuce. After, he glanced at the study. "Do you know what she said the day of your adoption?" he asked. I shook my head.
She stood right where you're standing and told me, I will treat this like any contract that matters. No assumptions, clear performance, renew daily. Then she muttered, and fewer adjectives. He laughed. She wasn't sentimental. She was devoted. I said, devotion reads louder than sentiment. He lifted his glass. 2 fewer adjectives. To verbs, I answered, and we clinked. Evening. A message tone, soft. Sam texted, got time for a walk? I sent back a photo of the timer and the tea, then 20 minutes. We met where the sidewalk buckled around tree roots. He didn't reach for my hand. He asked first, hug or space? I said hug and stepped in. We matched pace. I opened an envelope today and it said, you owe the past compassion, not access. He nodded, like he'd been expecting the sentence all along. That sounds like peace you can carry. At the corner, he asked, how do you want me to help when things stir up again? I said, ask before trying to fix. Remind me I don't have to answer every doorbell. He said, copy. And if I forget, you'll tell me? I said, I'll tell you. Boundaries didn't make love smaller. They made it truer. Daylight office hum, printer whir, quiet laughter. At work, a vendor tried an old line in a new tone. We'd feel better discussing price with your CFO. I said, you're speaking to the person who signs, pleasant and precise. I sent revised terms in a clean table. I added, this is the number, it works. Say yes or walk. They said yes by 4. Monique sent a gif of a queen adjusting a crown. I sent back the fountain pen. The foundation's second quarter report landed with numbers that breathed. Therapy sessions funded, 68. Textbook grants, 14. Emergency rent support, 9. We added a tiny program called First Keys, locksmith vouchers and first lock changes for people leaving unsafe situations. It felt literal and right. Keys go to people who show up. On Saturday, we hosted a small open house at the foundation office, lemonade slightly too tart again because tradition, and a slideshow full of faces. A young man named Eli shook my hand too hard and said, you don't know me, but I know this. Somebody put verbs behind a promise and I'm staying in school. I laughed, then cried, then laughed again. People filled plates and talked softly like the room was a living thing. Mrs. Bentley came in her best cardigan. She stood by a ficus and told 3 different people that Vivien used to time my piano practice with a kitchen timer like it was a board meeting. She said, 8 minutes for tea, 60 for scales. The woman believed in rhythm. Everyone nodded like rhythm was a miracle they could practice. That night, the house felt less like a museum and more like a bench you'd actually sit on. I wrote 2 more notes with the fountain pen, one to Margaret Chen, thanking her for choosing facts over heat, and one to the patrol sergeant, thanking the drive-bys for being visible. Small verbs, placed where they belonged. Study. Drawer slides. Paper soft. I took out Vivien's open when ready envelope again and read the sentence one more time. Compassion without access. Boundaries without revenge. Love that chooses doors and locks with equal care. The tools were clean. I slid the card back and closed the drawer. The soft close caught, did its gentle pull, and finished the job for me. I smiled. Not everything required force. Some things just needed the right hinge. If the line, compassion, not access, lands for you, comment keys so this story reaches someone who needs a hinge more than a hammer.
Early morning light, soft wind through trees. I went back to the cemetery one more time, not for closure, just for company. The stone was cool beneath my palm. The new word caught the sun the way I hoped it would. Mother. I have 3 updates, I told her, like I always did when decisions felt heavy. 1. The foundation funded our first keys lock changes for people leaving unsafe places. 27 doors that opened to peace. I smiled. 2. The spring launch did well. We argued with the vendor and still shook hands. You would have hated slide 7. I trimmed it. A breath. 3. I am practicing your sentence. Compassion, not access. It works. A breeze moved through the cedars. I left flowers, white, simple, and a note I didn't overthink. Thank you for teaching me verbs. Back home, the day arranged itself into the kind of rhythm I used to think only other people could have. The house held steady. Mrs. Bentley dusted frames and told me the ficus peeded a kinder window. I moved it. The timer ticked its exact 8 minutes, and we let it. Harold dropped by with a binder for the foundation's first audit and a box of lemon bars that looked stern but tasted kind. Board meeting next week, he said, leafing through tabs with quiet satisfaction. We'll approve the next quarter's grants. The machine works. I said, machines need oil, tapping the binder. Thank you for being ours. He shrugged like it was nothing and meant it was everything. First Friday still on? He asked. Always, I said. Sam texted in the afternoon. Walk, then noodles? He asked, as always, hug or space? I said hug, and we matched pace. He listened to a story about a vendor without suggesting a solution, then asked, want me to celebrate with you or just sit? I said, both. We split a bowl of something spicy, laughed at another bad haiku, this one about soup and taxes, and didn't make plans we couldn't keep. Verbs later. For now, presents. Mail slot clinks. An envelope lands. I stood with it a full minute. Then I walked it to the study, placed it in the drawer with Mom's letters, and closed the soft close like a benediction. Compassion without access. I emailed Harold. Received via counsel. I'm not opening it now. His reply, good boundary. I'll review, summarize, and hold unless action required. Consequences didn't need my attention anymore. Systems had them. The restraining order sat in the safe like a fence that didn't need to be loud to be effective. The police logs were quiet. The notary board's reprimand had posted. Miss Barker's commission suspended pending education. Mr. Delaney had gone from daily calls to quarterly footnotes. It turns out when you remove drama's audience, it leaves the stage. Study. Fountain pen glides. Paper size. I signed the foundation's next disbursement with Vivien's fountain pen. It moved like it remembered what mattered. We approved therapy sessions, a pair of textbooks, 2 first-month rent bridges, and 4 locksmith vouchers. The signatures felt like keys finding the right locks. I placed the pen back in its felt cradle and let my hand rest there a beat longer than necessary. I said, I'm doing it the way you taught me. Fewer adjectives, more action. That evening, Mrs. Bentley set the table with the good linen and the everyday plates, exactly Vivien's style. Harold arrived with citrus and a grin that counted as an exclamation point. Sam knocked, asked, hug or wave, and respected wave when I said it with a smile. We ate lemon chicken, we respected the lettuce, and we told true stories. Harold said 2 verbs. Sam added 2 boundaries. Mrs. Bentley, eyes twinkling, said 2 timers. We laughed, and I realized the room was full of chosen family, each person a proof point that love is a practice. After dinner, I stood at the sink and washed the heavy pans by hand, the way Mom always did when she needed to think. Through the window, the porch light drew a soft circle on the steps. The camera's small red LED blinked like a heartbeat. Not fear, just awareness. I dried the last plate, turned off the timer, and let the house settle. Porch. Quiet night. Crickets underline the scene. I sat on the top step with a sweater and the kind of tired that means you spent your day in the right places. Somewhere in Arizona, 2 people I used to orbit were living with their choices. The order would expire in 3 years unless we renewed it. I set a calendar reminder for 60 days before the date, then put my phone face down. I didn't owe the past access. I owed the future intention. People ask, do you forgive them? The answer changes with the hour. Some days forgiveness feels like a door I can see but don't need to open. Other days, it's a window I crack for fresh air and close when the room chills. What doesn't change is the boundary. Compassion, not access. It's a sentence that locks and unlocks exactly what it should.
What I inherited wasn't just a house and a company, it was a blueprint. Show up when it's inconvenient, put verbs where they belong, choose family by behavior, not biology, keep your tools clean, even the invisible ones. And when the doorbell rings at the wrong hour, remember you don't have to answer it. The wind picked up just enough to move the porch fern. I thought of 16-year-old me in that quiet courtroom, saying yes to the life that would teach me how to build myself twice. I thought of 28-year-old me pressing a restraining order into a safe and a fountain pen into paper. I thought of the word we carved into stone because it had always been true. Mother. If this story found you at the right time, tell me one thing. What's a boundary you set that changed everything? Drop verbs or chosen family in the comments so this reaches someone who needs a hinge more than a hammer. Like, subscribe, share with a friend who's rebuilding. And if you need resources, check the description for support links and the Vivien Hughes Foundation. I can't control who knocks. I can control which doors I open. And that, it turns out, is wealth I plan to spend every day. Soft piano returns. Fade out.